Let's talk about EMS operations and deployment of ambulance services. EMS operations and our deployment of our ambulances, we need to be aware that there is a geographic area that we are servicing, and within that geographic area we have our community. These include our local neighboring members, as well as our transient communities that come in from outer island or from the international communities. These are travelers or visitors, and we need to be able to respond within a reasonable amount of time to manage these emergencies. One way to do this is to use the system status management, or to have fixed stations, or to have posting or a mixed version of such. When we are using the system status management, this is where we have we know about our peak call volumes, we know about the type of community that we're servicing, and we'll go ahead and implement and staff more units during these peak times. This may be using a type of mixed resource where we have fixed stations and we post additional vehicles within that area to manage the peak call volumes. Now, most of our stations on the County of Hawaii are fixed stations where we have stations designed to respond to a community based on the community size and our call volumes. Posting is where we remove the fixed station altogether, and we just have these areas where we have roving type units that go from one post to the next, sort of like a taxi service, just the closest unit being posted to the next available emergency and so forth. And again, the last one would be a type of mixed where we have either fixed stations, posting, and this is all based to respond to the call, supply, and demand, the need for more ambulances because of these peak call times. So the incidences, we calculate these incidents, we document it, and we analyze these incidences over time, and we can tell because we use this as call volumes. And as our call volumes increase, we look at the geographic location and the units that respond, and you know that certain units on Hawaii County have a large more incident or call volume, and so we end up having more units within that particular geographic area. Now, response times are set for our metropolitan and suburban or sub-metropolitan areas. There are usually two different types of response times based on just the geographic location and the amount of ambulance units that we have, or EMS units that we have in that particular area. In our metropolitan area, we'd like to see response times under that 8 to 10 minute window, and then in our sub-metropolitan or sub-rural areas, our suburban areas, we'd like to see a little bit more into the 16 and 15 minute response times. And when we get into the rural areas, we know that these response times can even be much more dramatic and much larger. So we implement using CAD systems to aid our dispatching and to adjust the amount of units and our response times based on those peak call volumes. So for example, in a system status management, we would deploy and have agreements to deploy our backup contract so that we have more EMS services, EMS units to respond to the peak call volumes. We have this going on in most of our county services, but particularly for Hawaii County, AMR or the private entity augments the peak call volume areas and peak call volume times during those times. We look at our peak call volumes, and what we want to do is just to improve our response times. We go back to understanding that there's like an 8 to 10 minute response times. Our response times are definitely put into state contract And so each county has a particular time, and these times are pretty much standard throughout the state to respond to a call within a particular period of time. If we're not making these times, then there's the question as to what are we doing? Why aren't we maintaining these measurable response times? And during those deployments, not only is it our response times, but what type of level of care are we providing? In the state of Hawaii, each county is charged to provide ALS response care. And although we may have BLS units, we do scrutinize those calls so that if they do respond, a BLS unit does respond to an ALS type call, that ALS unit is going to be backed up, dispatched towards that incident. Again, it's based on location, population density, and our medical facilities. Well, unfortunately, Hawaii County is not similar to Oahu, where we have a lot of additional resources, that meaning units, EMS units, backup units, as well as other federal units. We don't have all of medical facilities and hospitals and specialty facilities to maintain a cohesive response, but we do what we can based on our population density. Some of the basic deployment principles is that a call comes in to dispatch. These calls come in through a public service answering point, or PSAP. This PSAP then decides whether it goes to police, fire, or EMS. That then call is then dispatched through EMD. They go ahead and put that out, and that information goes out across the CAD system. We end up taking all of our CAD system data, as well as our EPCR or documentation documentations, and we analyze this call volumes. We analyze the peak times. We analyze how our medical facilities are handling these type of call volumes and these type of patients as a response. And it allows us to provide more EMS staffing and to then justify having more units to provide a better service to our community. Now, who's in charge of this? It's usually the agency that has vied and bidded for that contract. So once they have the contract, they are binded by this contract to provide EMS services. There is written out and spelled out specifically response times for the urban environments, for your rural or suburban environments. There is areas within the contract that spell out backup mutual aid agreements must be made to maintain these call volumes and to provide coverage for the community, and to have this type of expansive EMS staffing, although it may not be provided directly from the entity that has this contract, but they're providing for such expansion during the times of peak call volumes. This is going to conclude the first series.